Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid and Sai's joining me once again.
Hi, I'm Sai, and I'm joining Lucid once again. We had a bit of a quick turn last time, but it looks like this one's should be showing a lot more battles for us.
Sweet! We got some juicy player-on-player action. I'm excited. And we also got some messages. So let's see what these guys are saying. We've got a message from Pythium here. Last turn was the first turn of our engagement with Agartha. Seemed to go pretty good. And eliminated some Umbrals and wiped a bunch of stuff with Foul Vapors. You probably noticed we set our Foul Vapors caster to cast rather than to retreat. This was to ensure we gym baited as well.
And the province defense also actually helps HP route your guy when you're doing that.
Right.
So it works great as a trap.
Yep. And it's a reason to put enough PD there. Like, you don't want one PD because that won't HP route your dude. You want enough PD to send your guy packing. To ensure we can conveniently wipe that army in combat, we need to ensure there are no elementals to go alongside the cave drakes. Nasty combination that. Without elementals, the cave drakes can be chopped down by combatances. There probably is a scout with gems riding alongside the party. We'll get them drained and eliminated soon enough. Elsewhere,
I actually don't know if that's true, just based on how many gems were spent. And I don't think that Agartha is going to have a massive pool of fire gems to keep burning like that. So I don't know if he actually brought like a train to reinforce for future battles, because you can't afford to drop 20 gems a turn.
Right. Well, he might be able to have 2 turns of that, and I think that's what Pythium's kind of thinking. It's like, hey, well, let's slice an artery here and start bleeding this guy out slowly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see this turn to see if he actually did re-up.
Right.
But if he did have any additional gems, I honestly don't expect it to be that many.
Right. Elsewhere, we'll begin pushing towards his cap. Feels like a solid arrangement. Other than that, putting up our first Mother Oak overcast, putting in 52 gems, I'm guessing that he cast with 51, so we're doing 52.
You don't want to do that.
That's that's way too low. Did it work?
Yeah,
No, did he take it? He took it.
That's very lucky.
That's so risky.
What's the second message say? Okay, no, 54. I still think that's too low.
Yeah.
But okay, it's at least more likely to work.
Yeah, what turn is this here? Because the players will be able to see
28.
this around turn 70. Yeah, I don't think this is... technically turn 60, but I probably won't have it up till it's turn 70. So yeah, this isn't very hot information for them to react to. If Pythium's still holding on to this with 54 gems at turn 70, that'll be something.
Hey man, last year I had Mother Oak with an exact minimum cast for the entire game.
That's amazing.
I don't think it's even that weird.
It's
like,
not that
actually
weird. But
yeah, folks don't tend to want to contest the spell that gives 10 gems over the ones that give 20.
Yeah. But it does make sense if you're going to be coalitioning somebody, it's always nice to like divvy up their globals among you. Like trade gems with each other until, I'll give you these, you give me these, and let's take down these globals. Would have been worth
that's true. More of a late game thing though.
Yeah. Okay.
And then yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that, like, for something like Mother Oak, you have to consider how long it's going to take to pay off. So, like, if you put 100 gems into it, then even if you count the negative 10 as, like, value, that still takes 5 turns to break even.
Yeah. I mean, that's not horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it requires you have 100 nature gems in the bank.
Right. And those are pretty freaking useful in the late game.
Yeah, because you need, like, 10 every turn, every army.
Yeah, you could literally never have enough nature to spend. I've like had air and I'm like, God, how am I going to spend all this? And I've had fire and I'm like, okay, well, I'll flames from the sky some armies or something. But nature, I've never... There's like 10 things that all want your attention with nature gems.
And that's not even counting the items.
Right. True. Okay, because you wouldn't have thought someone would have overcasted 52, so he'll have done 53, and therefore we'll do 54. Let's hope no one sees this message and overcasts us.
I think he's fine. I think he's already very lucky to have one with such a small overcast.
Yeah. Probably not wise to put exact gem counts in this unless it's late enough in the game you're pretty sure nobody will ever see it. But
yeah.
But anyway, I'm glad to see it worked. It's very shocking. I would have probably done at least like 80 or something to...
He might not have had 80.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, and that's like the catch, right? Because if you wait till you have 80, it might have already paid for itself for the original caster. So,
Yeah, and then you just get overcast again.
right. Hi, Lucid. Holiday here. Frenzy is away from his computer. This is from Marignon for a couple days, which means I have the pleasure of hopefully beating back this 2v1. The plan is to beat the Gath stack in a decisive battle before turning and dealing with Pan's army. We'll utilize our research advantage of Enchantment 6 and Conjuration 5 for combined Arrow Fend and full-sized air elementals. I believe the only way Gath wins an army versus army scenario is that he also has Arrow Fend, which I'm willing to bet he does not, as he went Drain 3 and has pulled mages for wars he's been in. Hopefully, with a decisive victory against Gath, this will open the gates for other players to take advantage of the exposed Gath, and we can switch gears to Pan. We'll see how aggressive passive Gath is willing to play, as we are on a bit of a timer, and Gath can take his time as long as other players are not threatening him. Hopefully, he underestimates us and exposes his army, hoping for a bit of magic and luck. Holiday.
Well, he took Misfortune too, so he's only got one of those.
Right. And he's right in pointing out that Gath isn't really on the clock, and he is. He kind of needs this battle. And of course, the flip side of that coin is that he, by trying to take a battle, will expose his tech and battle plans, right? And then Gath can react to that. But that's, and we talked about that too with Marignon, with Pangea.
Yeah.
Like Pangea would ideally probe him, see what he's going to do, and then he can do a counter plan. But that's a luxury, I think, that Marignon has to deny himself. He can't not expose his battle plans.
He needs to take the risk.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that I also actually agree with his identifying Gath as the easier of the two to fight.
Yeah.
So between the two, I think that it makes total sense to go eliminate the one that you're reasonably confident in fighting, and then focus on the harder 1v1.
Right.
Depending on like how things go and who all else gets involved, you can maybe even push into Gath after you've beaten that army.
And the paths that he has, especially having Aerofend against both of these players who are using, large archer-supported armies, I think and especially having Conjuration 5, where you have the ability to basically pay to win, I think he actually could maybe split his army, especially if if Pangea is not doom stacking.
The problem with doing that, though, is that if you try to split your army and lose, you've basically thrown the game. When if you're in a situation like this, then taking a decisive engagement and actually winning that decisive engagement is kind of, we kind of talked about this before with the other coalitions. That's your way back in. So because of that, I think that you very much do want to focus on one, just to basically prevent that worst case scenario, especially if you do feel pretty confident based on your tech in winning at least one of those fights.
Yeah, I hear you. I think the problem with going that, and of course this is what the Marignon player is going through, is if you do that, his forts are dispersed enough that he doesn't have time to only have one doom stack and not lose major infrastructure. And
that's fair. I think that he can afford, or that he has to cede a fort or two, regardless of which of the two that he fights. And that trying to do that double all in with just elemental spam is just too risky, and it introduces too many new elements of failure.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I feel aggressive enough in the Marignon situation. I would be looking to split my army in two and try to win two decisive fights. It's risky for sure.
Marignon can do, Pangea can do as well, outside of the blood stuff.
Does Pangea have Conjuration 3? I don't think they have the elemental spam and Aerofend, do they?
So they'd mentioned Gath had mentioned.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Message from Pangea. So far, so good. Yeah. I'm still alive at turn 26. I'm slowly renaming all my commanders while Warp PC is doing his job. We're raiding Marignon this turn with satyrs. Real army will come one turn later when Enchantment 6 is reached.
Yeah, so he's got Aerofend. And Gath had actually mentioned to us before that Pangea had told him that Aerofend was going to be part of his plan as well.
Yeah.
And the centaurs can do water, air, and earth elementals. So not fire, but they definitely can do air elemental spam if needed.
Yeah. I feel like, especially with Diabolus type dudes, slamming a ton of fire elementals, I feel like Marignon could out elemental Pangea, especially. It depends. All this is huge asterisks. It depends, right? How many mages do they each bring? How many gems are the mages loaded up with? But it would not be hard for Marignon to put out like 15 fire elementals. And I would never
On the other
expect that
hand,
many from.
I would also say though that both players in this sort of like elemental versus elemental thing are going to try to force the other person to burn their gems. And between the two, the guy who's being 2v1 is the one who's more on a timer
Right.
and really actually has to put himself out there. So trying to force that elemental exchange is much riskier for Marignon than it is for Pan, because Pan
Right.
can commit when he wants to.
Yeah. Some of this, and it's a little bit like that situation with that Micklin southeastern fort that they had that they couldn't really defend well. Some of this, and it's something that's worth thinking about when you're building infrastructure, is it's just like I would get so locked into I don't want to lose this that I'm going to be willing to take very risky engagements to protect it. I hate losing forts. I really do.
Yeah. I don't mind feeding forts.
Yeah.
You can always take back forts later.
That's true. The other thing is you don't have to, in this situation, fully kill Pangea or fully kill Gath. Killing 300 units, like if they split their army because maybe they don't want to be full commitment, is a lot of times enough to get other people moving immediately, ending their naps, which can get you out of the 2v1 and leave you in a 1v1. So, but yeah.
That just goes back to being able to survive the battles yourself.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that focusing on killing Gath, losing a couple forts to Pan is fine, and then you basically pivot once you've dealt with the Gath army.
Yeah, see, I like everything about that except the losing forts part.
Yeah.
Okay, Mother Oak will be overcast at some point. Hopefully not before we get the gems back we put into it and some more. Okay, rip. With these two moves, Global plus Marignon, our perceived power status might move into from the not easy to fight into must be coalitioned. War PC is diploing heavily to avoid that. Talimsha. I don't know, how do you say this? I have no idea. Shia.
Limshaya?
Talimshaya? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. You can ask him.
So, I might have missed this part. Some players, Marignon included, are not happy about this move. Wait, did we read all this? The winner of the Agartha Pythium will probably get the northern parts. Some players, Marignon included, are not happy about this move. For us, it was mostly to help Gath become a strong and trustful ally while we focus on our two main threats, Erythia and Tianqi. Both of them want us to join in against one another. We're leaning to fight Tianqi, but haven't agreed on anything yet. Well, that's also interesting because we know Erythia is thinking about stabbing Pangea, and Tianqi is the one blocking that. So it's kind of weird that they want to fight Tianqi.
Yeah, I also don't know why they would feel more threatened by Tianqi than Erythia.
Right. Yeah, I don't either.
But it's kind of cool that he is planning long term and that he's actually considering his game state after winning this war.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing is this gives us a glimpse into his motivation, right? So he's trying to secure Gath as a long-term trustworthy ally, which is kind of what we were seeing. And I think that makes sense. But it also lets us know he's probably not going to want to commit 100 gems and 40 mages to this war. So it'll be interesting to see how high commitment he is.
I think that he is getting enough out of this war to be worth that commitment. Because if you look at the map, he's actually getting a ton of loot.
Right. Yeah. And we'll pull that up in a second, the map. Message first from TNG. We have site searched 25 provinces for Earth sites, about as many for nature, and have found a grand total of 1 Earth and 2 nature, not from thrones and capitals. Thanks. I thank the ancestor for the throne of life, or this would be hopelessly depressing. These are the most useful types of gems for this nation. Fortunately, the game is big enough that we've managed to buy enough Earth gems to make hammers, so we'll be able to do some forging. But my ambition to do Earthblood Depot this game is probably a lost cause. Overall, gem come is pretty good, at least. We're contributing to a Pythium-led overcast of Mother Oak. Okay, so this Pythium overcast is part TNG. That's important.
Or at least TNG sponsored, yeah.
Right. This may have been a bad decision, given that they are a neighbor. We definitely have to fight at some point. But on balance, Pangea having the global is a lot more cancerous. We're ending a non-aggression pact with Erythia. This will likely be a hard war. Given their impressive infrastructure, I expect a horde of Ducados. And even if we wipe an army or two, going underwater in force is hard. And this will be my first real war versus an underwater nation. So I expect
Is that true?
it's possible. He's not a very new player.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why
he's a sort of new
surprised me.
player. He's been around
Okay.
for like a year and a half, but
Okay.
I've kind of been coaching him in different games. So he's kind of learned quickly from that, and he's just really sharp. And I think he's watched a bunch of videos and guides and stuff. So he's way better at the game than you would expect from somebody who hasn't played as much as he has. But I think he's like he's won almost all his games, but he's only played in like 8 or something. So
okay. Yeah, so probably true then. Especially since a lot of games make the sensible decision of banning underwater outright.
right. And the best strategy for fighting underwater, which is sticking your head in the sand and ignoring them, sometimes works. So
Often, surprisingly often.
right. But it does okay. So I expect some forever war pain, but it does let us choose a war without triggering a coalition. Vedheim seems cool with us dealing with the underwater problem, and Arco has gone so far as to say they'd attack Vedheim if we get backstabbed by them. Zabal and Pythium have both made sounds like they might help, but neither has made any promises more compelling than they'll come vulture any poorly defended citadels after we fight the Erythia main army. Should be interesting.
That's a very polite way to say that you're like going to help them only if they win.
Right.
I approve.
Yeah. I like how he's doing Diplo too, because a lot of people, when they do Diplo, they try to like bully people into doing things. And that just usually doesn't work. You can tell here they're just seeing what each of these players' motivations are and what each of these players want them to do. And it doesn't mean they're going to do what the players want them to do, but they're identifying which players they're aligned with, which ones they're neutral with, and which ones they're against. So people end up behaving much more predictably when you actually listen to what they're saying and what they're motivated by.
Yeah, and it also makes sense, in my opinion, for everyone else in the game to want TNG to fight Erythia.
Right. Yeah. 100% agree. Okay, so we've done all those. Let's take a look here at this war with Marignon, because this is going to be spicy.
Yeah, so you can kind of see what I mean when I'm referring to loot. So they get one fort essentially for free, right? Like that's not going anywhere. And then if you look along the eastern coastline, they're getting 2 farms, a forted throne, an additional palisade that's already been built with a lab.
Wait, where's the forward turn? Oh, this one.
Yeah.
They're going to be hard-pressed, I think, to claim that, but maybe.
Well, they're going to be hard-pressed to keep it, I suppose. But if Pythium and Agartha is like taking a little while to resolve, you can just kind of bulldoze your main army up through that eastern shoreline, go smash the Devil Fort, which presumably has the soul contracts in it, and then go grab that throne before anyone else can.
Yeah, I kind of made some posts about this in my some Discord thread, and we've probably talked about it before, but dear God, I do not like soul contracts.
We did talk about soul contracts.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, this is
very inefficient.
They're fine. They're fine. It's just you have to understand how greedy they are. They are the greediest thing almost in the whole game. So
if you look at the satyrs to the right, in like just to the east of that, that's actually interesting because it's cutting off Erythia or Pythium from basically grabbing some free stuff.
Right.
So to me, that speaks to a lot of confidence on Pangea's part. Of not only is he going to, go beat up Marignon and take his stuff, he's going to do it without anyone else helping, and he wants to make sure to keep the plunder for himself.
Right.
So that's partly also why I think that it makes sense for him to try to push quickly for that throne, just in order to secure it before any vultures can get their hands on it.
Yeah, and we know that Erythia was thinking about going on Pangea, so this certainly opens that up as a further incentive for them to do so. But that's not really on the table with TNG ending their nap with them. And we know that message got sent this past turn. So I expect Erythia to be annoyed by this, but also to accept it.
Yeah. I mean, you can't really reasonably be annoyed that someone is taking things that you would have wanted to vulture, especially given that, for all we know, he's never made any noises about going to help them in their war against Marignon.
Right. Well, I think he's annoyed in the sense that he wanted to fight Pangea after, that Pangea was kind of the desired target, right? And now Pangea is kind of flaunting, hey, you're not going to get any of the spoils. which would like antagonize him further to be like, yeah, we're fighting Pangea, but he can't do anything about it. So
Yeah, and we'd kind of talked before about having that little corridor to get to Marignon's lake is very high value for him because those are provinces that
right.
he can defend very easily once he gets that lake, as well as just being very high value themselves in terms of like the actual income.
So yeah, I mean these raiding parties, they're only fighting like 6 PD. Or this is 1
1 PD.
PD. 1 PD, okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, not really any real resistance. Yeah, I wouldn't have really expected deep raiding back here with Pangea because I don't really think of Pangea as a stealth faction very much, but it's really cool. So he probably would have caught me off guards too with this. Like, if elves were attacking me, I'd be like, okay, and I'd have counter defenses everywhere that might be able to kill satyrs, like fire elementals or something. But yeah, he would have caught me off guard too. He's got a lot of satyrs out here that are running around.
Yes, the nice thing about satyrs, outside of the fact that they're stealthy, is they're great siege chaff because
Right.
they actually have like superhuman strength. 11's not that impressive, but it's better than normal.
Right.
And they cost so little gold.
Right.
So you basically get a ton of value in terms of like being able to break down fort walls, while also having these guys that are stealthy. So if you don't want them in your big fight because you're worried that they're going to HP route you or something, you could just have them stealth and then they don't show up.
Right. That's a great point. Now, I was thinking it would make sense as Marignon to maybe try to ride out here, but you were saying if Pangea was expecting that they do that, Pangea might gem bait them or something here. Well, that doesn't
Yeah.
appear to have happened. And Pangea instead did this move we were discussing was pretty likely, where if they didn't go all in on the fort battle here, they could split the army and fork these 2 forts, where now Marignon can't really defend both of them. I mean, this one he kind
Marignon
of can't defend at all, except
Yeah,
from
that's
here.
what I was gonna say. He can't defend that Eastern Fort. Period.
The
Like,
only
that's
way
that's
he
gone.
okay, let's challenge that. PD dump plus all the mages plus a lot of gems, he might be able to. And this actually, it's a lot of times. I think this is what separates like okay players versus great players. A lot of times, is you get given a situation like this, right, where this army you 100% know it's going here, right, because you can't defend this fort. And if you can turn around and say, yes, I can, it's pretty fucking cool. Now, I don't
think that
know if you can, but that's the
Yeah, I think-
challenge, right? That's the puzzle.
I think if Pangea gives any respect whatsoever to the idea that elementals might show up, there's no way that army loses to them.
Well, what would he do if they were like fire and air elementals combined with devils and a PD dump? Like, what would Pangea do with this? They've got
You got 1 billion crossbows. Well, actually, with Arrowfend, I guess it depends on how many mages they can actually bring.
Right.
But
that's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
think
That's like the
I don't
thing.
think 15 is enough. I think like the quantity that you'd need to hit in order to get enough elementals to kill that army quickly enough before your side gets routed by the like blob of satyrs and crossbows is very, very high.
I think they could have over 20. I think they could have like 25. And, whether that's enough, I don't know. But that's the interesting thing that's...
It's worth testing.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I just think that Pangean army is too lethal.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to carve through the PD. Like, Marignon PD does not exactly have very durable units that are going to be able to tank satyr lances. Much less satyr lances plus crossbows.
But you can maybe get rid of the lances with imps. I don't know. It would be very... this is what I... like, it would be very difficult, right? The odds are certainly on Pan's side, and they're on Pan's side well enough that it's like... And he can see all this too. He's got scouting. But I think if you're Pangea, you don't really worry about this because it feels so good. But I just want to mention there's the possibility, the faint hope of a reversal where you just move everything here and go all in on a defense. And that could be the exact thing you need if it works, but it may not work. So.
Yeah, and it kind of relies on Pan leaving all of his own mages at home.
Maybe. Yeah, we don't know how many... I mean, I have no idea how many mages are with this, and I don't know how many he would need. But so far, Pan's mages have mostly been doing like buffs and Sleeping Cloud and stuff like that. I don't know how well that would do against massed elemental spam, but...
I mean, the Ethereal and Luck both help a ton against air elementals, but they don't help as much against fire.
Right.
Ethereum in particular, of course, does nothing in that
Right.
case.
So anyway,
The other thing that's interesting is he's got his own fort there with the lab where it looks like his sages are all hanging out.
oh,
Sorry,
this one,
the
yeah.
pen. Yeah. So I would guess actually that the army that he has pushed over there doesn't actually have that many mages deployed, and that
Right.
he might be marching it on with only like a very skeleton crew of sages, and then planning on two province moving them before they actually need to fight.
Right. I mean, he'll one turn pop this fort, but it could be he moves the mages in so that if there's a battle outside the fort, they participate in it or
Well, the other
something.
thing is the sages should have enough move speed to reach that province because yeah, it's not frozen, and those
Right.
guys are very fast. So they can actually two province move onto the enemy fort.
Right. They could join this army as well this turn. So there could
Yeah.
be, like all these mages could show up here, and all of these mages, or maybe not these guys because there's a river to cross, but certainly all these mages could show up here.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking is that the army on the field there
Oh,
most
man.
likely doesn't have the mages in it. Yeah. Oh, so I was right. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, so he's letting his mages just sit back and read books, assuming that his mages can then go join the battle just because they're fast guys.
Right. So yeah, I guess that's what we'll see is 20 mages show up here and 20 mages show up here with this army.
I don't know if he's even going to bother with 20 mages on the Eastern Fort. He might just trust to his troops.
Right.
We'll
Well,
see.
that's a potential vulnerability if Marignon. But these are the things, they're risky, they may not work. And like the amount of uncertainty, like if you were to test this, how many mages from Pangea do you give them and what spells do you script? These are all things that you can take guesses at as a Marignon player, but you wouldn't even really know.
Oh, check out the Mountain Province.
This
I
one?
just want to look at that, the Alchemist Guild.
Oh yeah.
That's a really interesting site. I mean, those guys are very expensive, so it can be
Right.
sometimes hard to justify buying them. But they do bring some really cool cross paths.
Right. Yeah.
I guess less valuable for Marignon because they actually can get them naturally.
Right. For Pangea, they're huge though.
Pangea, they're fire.
Fire, yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of nice. But I don't know if you'd get too many of them.
Right.
Probably
Yeah,
at least
that's
one.
fair.
But yeah.
That's
Oh,
fair.
he does have his own fire mage though.
Did he get one of the thrones? What was that?
No, he got an event mage.
Oh yeah,
just
this guy right here. Yeah.
Yeah, so the
Mainly a
Adept is a
pyromancer's,
fire 3.
yeah.
And the pirate, so it's the event where you get like the big fire mage who's like an
Right.
F3, and then the apprentice F1 mages.
Right.
That's cool.
So the other thing here is that Marignon has moved back to their capital, and I don't like this.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
And he needed, I think, like the move I was talking about him making was potentially moving a significant force down here to defend this turn, and then another force, most of it over here, and that would have to be enough to fight this. Now,
Yeah, I think he needed to just go put everything on the gas side. Or
Yeah.
what I would have done is just put everything on the gas side there.
Right.
I mean, whether that's the optimal move or not is up for discussion. But I think that he needed to have enough there now in order to beat that Gath army, and I don't think that he does.
Right. Yeah, because now this fort is popped and he doesn't have the ability to attack it really. I don't think. Maybe it's possible with just this if there's
His
enough
god
mage
is
support
there.
with enough gems.
His god is there though, the
Right.
Master Enchanter.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe it's possible. I don't think it is because if you attack, like let's say this army could kill this, you've also got this army which potentially could reinforce it, right? Which if I were Gath and I was gonna double down to take this fort, maybe I move all these guys on top, and then you have to fight these combined. I mean,
Yeah, and that's really scary because you don't even see all the mages that Gath is bringing.
right.
And I actually do like that Gath split up that way, even though, it can seem a little risky to split your army like that on the eve of a major battle. But the advantage to doing that is the supply situation is much alleviated.
Right.
So he can basically bring everything together, and because the starvation is checked later in the turn, then even though they might starve after the battle, they're not going to be starving in the fight, so you don't have to worry about that morale penalty.
Right, and if he storms it and takes the fort, that alleviates a lot of the starvation issues. So
Yeah, because you get the supply bonus.
right. So yeah, I don't love this move. I don't love everything in the cap. The one nice thing about keeping some stuff in the cap is that this move is still on the table. Like he actually has the ability. Okay, like on one hand, makes sense to focus Gath, but this turn he can't really do much to Gath. He can just come over here. He has the possibility this turn to mop the floor with Pangea. He would have to send like 2 province move, everything that can 2 province move down to this fort, and then move everything over here and defend this one. And it's possible he could kill both of these armies from Pangea this turn.
Yeah, I think that you need to do a lot of testing, particularly
Right.
for that Eastern battle, because both of those are very high risk moves.
Right. Yeah. Super high risk. But right now he's set in a position where if he keeps his current focus on Gath, he's going to throw another turn away. Like a whole turn away, right? Like if he takes this stuff and moves it over here, he's given another turn of complete free reign to Pangea and presumably just gives this fort to Gath. You can't afford to waste turns like that. You need to be killing armies, because it's one thing I've talked about before is when you're getting coalitions, you live and die by your armies, so you need to keep your armies alive. So on one hand, doing risky plays like this, you might lose your army, but you that's the other condition is you must take fights when they present themselves, because every turn you don't take a major fight, you're going to be losing important things you care about dearly. So
yeah, I think that he needed to have put his stuff in position to fight last turn, and that drawing back to his capital here, as you pointed out, it really is just setting him behind.
Right.
He can do some counter raiding this turn, I guess, but that's not what you want to be doing at this point.
We have a kind of cool Gath thug here.
This is a repel thug. This. Yeah, believe we've seen this guy before though.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Did this guy? Okay, Fire Mage. He did Region and Enlarge.
Yeah.
Holy Avenger. Yeah, I mean, this is a spooky man.
Yeah, I quite like that. And it's the only downside of using those giant mages is that they've got a lot of hit points, so it gets a little bit easier to HP route.
Right.
But when you're relying on repel, like that guy is, and having very high protection, like he's got a lot of things going in his favor for mitigation stacking, he shouldn't be losing that much health. And if he goes down below a half HP, then he's in trouble.
Yeah, so, this guy's hard to kill. Yeah. 5 shock resistance, 30 fire resistance, 10 cold resistance. He's got horror to route. He's got 25 repel. He's very killy. 29
and then
protection. Regen.
The other nice thing about fear is that because overcoming repel is itself a morale check,
right,
then it actually increases his defense functionally as well.
And this guy's pretty cheap. Like, this is slaves, and then he's got... I mean, the horror hat is expensive. The only
25 gems of gear
thing here, but yeah. And he could have replaced this probably just as well with something else. This is a little bit of a luxury spend, even though it's nice.
It is very helpful, honestly. Yeah, because you're only doing 1 attack per turn. The fear helps route stuff much more quickly.
That's true. So yeah, pretty cheap gear.
Yeah. 25 gems is absolutely budget for how good he is. I mean.
So this is interesting. This is the only counter rating we've seen so far from Marignon, because mostly everything that's been raiding has been running into 1 or 6 PD.
This is a blood hunting province.
Oh, okay. Yeah, indeed. So it's not real counter rating. It's more like
they happen to be here.
Right.
Depending on how you interpret naps, it's also possible that Gath did not expect either of the people fighting him to already have stealth stuff in his territory.
That's true. Or you mean Marignon?
Marignon, yeah.
Yeah.
Because those guys had to have already been there. Or actually, that's not true.
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
They
did.
Certainly did.
Right? Yeah, they had the Bakemono can't 2 move, so they would have had to have been in Marignon's provinces.
Wait, but isn't this the second turn of war? So they could have been here and then moved here, right?
I believe that this is the first turn that they're attacking him.
Oh, is it? Wait, 1 second. Okay, so we went and checked, and apparently I was smoking the drugs, and yeah, this is the first turn of hostilities. So this unit would have had to have been stealth moving through Marignon's territory while their nap was on the last turn of being ticked down. Now, I personally expect this when I'm fighting elves, but it's really risky to do with Bakemono, because 40 Bakemono, like we're just talking about while we had this paused, 40 Bakemono will get caught by anything, right? Like if you have 10 guys patrolling, they'll catch 40 Bakemono. So it's really easy to like have a fight. while the
For all that
Nefs
you
take
mentioned
over.
elves, I do want to say that these raiding parties out of Gath and Pangea, which are functionally the same, right? They're these low gold cost 40 stealth units. These things are much, much more economical than an elf raiding party because
Right.
elves are expensive and
Yeah.
these are not.
Right. They're, all the Bakemono and Satyrs you can counter with just PD. If you put 20 to 30 PD, it's going to give a very hard time for any of these things. Or 15 PD with one elemental caster is going to give a hard time to all these things. Elves do tend to sometimes do better against that, depending on what elves are fielding. So that's like kind of the niche of elves, is that they're better
They're more elite.
against larger dumps or like very low commitment defenses that will work against chaff raiding like this. But the downside is that if they switch from doing like one elemental caster in 20 PD to 3 elemental casters in PD, then you lose like 900 gold of elves. It's like, ah, fuck.
Yeah, and I mean, like a 40 Bakemono raiding party, like that's literally 280 gold all told. So
Right.
like it might even cost less to use it than the PD dump that counters it.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, he managed to kill this, which is that's a nice little silver lining.
Yeah, and that was completely by accident because that's just a blood hunting province.
Right. And he probably wasn't expecting anybody could be here because, like we were talking about with the naps. But
yeah, so kind of a nice thing to note though is that he's actually blood hunting like basically the perfect province there in that cave because it's just over 5,000 population. So basically like the absolute minimum in order to get your optimal slave returns. And it's a cave, so it has reduced income. So you actually lose less by hunting it than you do one of your like more gold rich provinces.
yeah, and things like imps are better in caves, so they're even better defending it. They enjoy that juicy dark vision bonus.
The other thing that's interesting though is that he's hunting with the Gothic masters, not the
Oh,
Diabolists. So these guys are more expensive than the like super cheap Blood 1 guys. The upside being that they can roll like higher blood. So these guys are starting from Blood 2 and going from 1 to 2 to 3 are all like very valuable cutoff points.
right. 2 to 3 less valuable than 1 to 2, but still
Right. But
still
anything
pretty good.
beyond
Beyond
yeah,
3
anything
doesn't matter much. It's mostly you get one more blood slave a turn.
pretty yeah, exactly. Like they beyond 3 is where you start seeing like a sharp drop off.
Yeah. These guys here, I think they can roll blood too. So yeah, you would think
Yeah.
you would use the blood randoms of these for hunting a lot, but
Yeah, you don't know how many of them he's got though.
right. I do like the idea, especially before you have sanguine dousing rods, because normally you just think, okay, this is my blood hunter. But when you don't have a ton of infrastructure at the beginning, it does make a lot more sense maybe to use these guys. Because the ones that aren't blood, you can use them as lab rats and things like that. And they're definitely more flexible in an early war than these dudes.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice to roll the Gothic Adepts just in order to try to hit the Astral guys for your horror spam and stuff.
Right. So, and then they lost. Oh, wait, this was a ping. Okay. So, short summary is Marignon has to decide, do they double down on Gath or do they potentially take a very risky but possibly decisive move against Pangea with an indeterminate number of mages, which makes it even more exciting. So that's the main decision they have to make. And then, of course, if they do that, how they're going to do it. And then they also have a further decision to make, which I think would be a bad one. But do they roll out with everything they have here and fight? Which I think is just really fucking risky. But
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to the Pangea situation, except in my mind, that absolutely could have been avoided by just
right.
putting their stuff there instead of in the cap. But no sense in harping on it, and we'll just
Yeah,
have to
the
see
only
what he
thing
actually
that's
wants to
different
do.
is this can reinforce. And that's the significant difference
Yeah.
between the Pangea situation. But yeah, you're right. Otherwise similar. Agartha.
So Agartha last turn, we'd seen this army get super poisoned and gem baited. And it looks like he split up his forces as I would have thought, so that's good. He didn't split them up that much. So he did actually keep a pretty big stack of these guys together.
Right. So he doesn't take the Serpent Priest, but does kill a Reveler. And then these guys.
Yeah, so Pythium's defense here, it seemed as though he was a lot more scared of Agartha's army than I think maybe he needed. Oh,
There
he
are
did
some
have extra
elementals.
gems.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, there were more gems there, I suppose. So I guess he's just being very conservative and trying to avoid losses. But the thing is, if you bring enough stuff to kill this army, you're gonna lose some of your infantry guys, right? You're gonna lose your combatances. But like the amount of gold that you lose for losing the province is pretty comparable to the actual army losses that you take in order to go win the battle.
Right.
And then once you've won the battle, then you've protected your territory and you don't have to keep worrying about it.
Yeah. So between these, so Agartha's basically been doing some dividing and conquering. They left some stuff here, which has killed, and also a very significant PD dump, which has killed some counterattacks. And they've split their army with the very few mages that they have remaining. And they've taken 2 more provinces.
Yeah, I think Agartha's move there tactically in splitting up their army after it had essentially been hard countered by that Vapors trap was very good. They were
Right.
absolutely making the best of a bad situation, and starbursting your army out like that to try to cause as much damage as it still can is 100% the best move that they had remaining to them.
Right.
That said, they're still in a very bad situation, and this is something that Pythium could have answered
Oh my god.
if they had actually deployed enough stuff in order to win those battles, which we know that they had in those neighboring forts. So basically, it was simultaneously a smart move from Agartha, but it still only worked because Pythium didn't fully commit in order to actually counter it.
I feel like Aaron, the Agartha player, is a little bit being haunted still by the ghost of Kosk or Midgard.
No, absolutely. No, you're 100% right. Like, he's in this situation where he just has less stuff to play with because he had been burned so heavily by Midgard's dying gasps, his
Right.
final defiances.
But he was also really upset. Like, Midgard was upset that Agartha attacked them in a 2v1 rather than trying to go after one of their Foul Vapors neighbors before they got Foul Vapors. And they are just getting ruined by Foul Vapors right now.
I will say, though, that you can't fight Pythium before they have Foul Vapors.
That's true.
You can attack them on site on turn 6, and they'll still have Foul Vapors before your first major battle.
This Pythium, maybe not. I feel like this Pythium's research was a little slow.
This
but
Pythium took an awake triple
true.
thing.
That's true, too. Yeah, he probably would
There's
have.
no way they don't have Foul Vapors by your first major battle.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. So maybe Kosk's disgruntlement was unjustified, but woo. Still, his spirit hot Agartha.
Yeah, he did lose. So those competences are actually quite expensive. Like, those are the 15 gold
Right.
high resource cost guys. So, you know, it's not great to lose that number of soldiers. But compared to what he killed, this is an amazing trade.
Yeah. He lost, I think, all in here about 1,000 gold to troops and maybe a little bit more, like 1,200 maybe. And then, I don't know, another 200 gold. So he lost about 1,400 gold, maybe 1,300. And Agartha lost, I mean, dear God. I mean, just the cave drakes. These are 80 gold a pop. The ensembles.
His troop losses were a little less than that, like only a little over 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, nowhere near to what Agartha lost there. Agartha
Right.
got smashed.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know why Agartha thought he would win that fight. That doesn't make any sense to me. Because he still doesn't have Foul Vapor's answer. He obviously has seen that Pythium is using it, right? So I have no idea why he thought this army would win.
I don't even know if he was planning on winning. I think he might have been, his thought process for this might have been, I can kill this army. Like, I might not have a way to win the fight decisively, because I can't fight into Foul Vapors, but maybe these fire elementals will be enough. And these other troops will stall it long enough for the fire elementals to kill everything. I mean, honestly, he's probably getting a decent amount of value out of these fire-resistant Limitain troops.
Yeah.
Because these fire elementals aren't really tearing these dudes up.
Yeah, well, part of that, though, is that they're just dying so quickly because there's no protection buffs for them.
Right.
Fire elementals get completely transformed when you can actually put, like, Marble Warriors or the nature protection spells on them.
Combustion. He was being a cheap bastard. Look at this. This guy did Phoenix Fire Elemental, and then Combustion, and he had fire gems. Meaning, that tells us
a split those better.
Well, that tells us a little bit about his thought process, right? Like,
he thought he could win this fight.
He thought he would win this fight. He thought this was probably going to be a light raid. He didn't want to go all in. And he was going to just do like one fire elemental, didn't want to do two.
And you see, actually, there one of the problem with the Umbrals is that guy's retreating,
Yeah,
even though, yeah, because these guys are not 30 morale units,
right.
so they actually can get chopped down the way that you don't necessarily expect from your undead.
They also can get repelled, which is not something you're normally worried about. Let's see if it happens here. Umbral hit.
Yeah, that's at least a little less common because they're ethereal.
Wait, does ethereal stop repel?
I think so. I think that like if you wouldn't take the damage, then you don't have to beat it with your morale roll.
Does this guy
Actually,
repel?
I need to double check that.
Oh, here it was. Umbral's life drain attack was repelled by combatants. Yes.
There you go.
So it happened some.
Well.
Oh, it happened again. It's happening a lot. This Umbral might not have actually ever hit anything. Missed.
Okay, so it negates the harassment penalty, but it does not block the repel check.
Yeah. So this,
So
this particular Umbral, he missed and then he got repelled twice. He hasn't actually done any damage.
That's that 11 attack at 1 per square for you.
Yeah. So
yeah, so these guys are another unit that becomes so much better with magic support, both because they benefit immensely from the higher strength, improving how much they're draining. They benefit from the protection, given that they're a 0 protection base unit. And of course, with life drain, you once again get additional returns from your repel. And then finally, you of course benefit immensely from something like Earth Meld in order to allow them to hit reliably,
right,
and keep stacking up those hit points.
Yeah.
So it's a great scaling unit when you can actually properly support them.
Right.
But deployed on their own like that, the whites are actually much better.
Yeah.
Just because the whites have that aura, which kind of functions on its own. They have a weapon, which makes a huge difference for these repel checks, and also just for increasing their damage.
Yep.
And because they come with armor, they're a lot cheaper to buff, because even Legions of Steel helps them out.
Right. Very cool, though. And Pythium just very cautious, but every time Pythium has taken an engagement here, they're winning it pretty decisively. So,
yeah,
Gartha's doing... Pythium is losing the territory game, but they're winning the army game. And it's more important to win the army game than it is to win the territory game.
Yeah, Pythium is absolutely in the favored position in this war, although I would say that he was going into it. But from here, he still actually has a lot of cleanup work to do. He has to clear out those provinces, clean up those mages that are in his territory, and then go actually take some of Agartha's infrastructure.
Yeah.
This would be a whole lot easier if he still had Utgard ramming or threatening Agartha's capital and taking all that nice farmland. And Utgard himself is missing out by not doing that, because none of that territory can possibly be defended.
Right, we have Utgard over here, still very busy with the barbarian uprisings. It's a little bit like Rome at the end of its time, with all of these insurgents to the...
I would say that there's a difference in how existential of a threat these barbarians are, and I would also say that the Romans did not have scrawny thugs.
That's true. Yeah, it's a little sad that we don't see these barbs being used for their given purpose at this point in the game, which is XP farms. But, we'll just have to accept it.
Yeah, he at least got a free lab, so he can go build a fort there and get more of the super efficient scythe coner.
He has been researching. While we're on the Utgard topic, I mean, he is top of the pack for research.
Well, he's in the top pack, we should say.
Right. He's in the top pack, but that's significant.
Yeah.
It means that he can, because one of the problems when you're small is a lot of times you'll fall behind on research and other things, and it's like you can never get back into the game. It being up there with the big boys in research. Now, he's not going to be able to keep up in the long run at this size, but it means there's still the opportunity for him to vulture off a war and get himself slowly back into the game. But if he were down here, it's like the problem if you're down here like, who is this?
I believe that's Joman.
Yeah. So Joman is in a similar situation. They're a one-cap nation. They're pretty small, right? But for them, even once they fix, okay, they're small, now they're a medium-sized nation. Like, once they fix that, they've got the second problem that they didn't have to fix of, okay, well, everybody else has 7s and I've got 4s. And that problem isn't going to go away for a while.
Yeah, and I also think that part of that is just that Midgard is just a really good nation.
Yeah.
And their ability to recover in terms of like keeping up on research just speaks to how efficient those Scythe Koner are, that just spamming them, even from your little pocket that you've got there, is already enough to make you a top tier researcher.
Right. I mean, Agartha is basically dead. There is no reason Utgard shouldn't parlay with Pythium and get at least 5 provinces here. Marignon also is in no position to contest this anymore. So, he should come in and take this. Now, what I expect has happened, though, is Utgard has probably signed a non-aggression pact with Utgard, because Utgard, we know, does a lot of diplomacy.
With Agartha.
Agartha, yeah. Has done a lot of diplomacy. Well, he probably needs to get himself out of that. And he can also probably just politely ask Vedheim for this. Well, Vedheim's a free agent, so maybe not right now. I probably wouldn't politely ask.
You can politely ask. It's just Vedheim might say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that had been Utgard's province, I believe. It had just got nommed by barbarians.
Okay.
You can hit I to double check the history there, but I'm pretty sure. Oh, nope. Okay. Barbarians got it.
No, it was Utgard's down here.
Oh, it was Utgard's.
Yeah. So you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he could politely ask, say, hey, do you mind if I have it back? And then go pick up these things. But this is not
You can pay him a nice little fee for the mercenary work of clearing those barbarians for you.
Right.
But given that Vedheim site searching it looks like Vedheim wants to keep it. I also think Vedheim can kill Utgard.
Right. But it may be that Vedheim wants to go kill somebody else and then keep Utgard as like a
non-threatening neighbor.
A non-threatening neighbor, but also a friendly snack to have at their choosing, right? Like you might want to save your easy snack for later.
Yeah, although if you know how well he's researching, which I guess there's no reason that he would, but like if you can surmise it, then you might decide to go fight them while they still haven't. Well, they're still suffering from a lack of buildup in terms of like troop quantity and mage mass.
Well, I mean, Utgard's not going to be easy to kill, exactly, right? Because the one thing Utgard does have is mages. So if you're pushing into his land and you're going to make it real cheap for Utgard to pull all their mages,
There are some tricks that you can do to beat up a communion like that if they don't properly prepare for battlefield clear stuff.
Yeah.
And he also doesn't have that many. I guess he's got a couple Scradiad, and you don't need that many to set up a stable communion. But if you have only 2 slaves, then the actual casters doing the Horde of Skeletons and stuff will actually get exhausted themselves relatively quickly, which makes fatigue plays like Rigor Mortis and even Grip of Winter, since Scythe Koner don't have like the sort of they don't have the sort of cold resistance that like the actual Jotuns do. So there are a lot of ways that Vedheim can play this.
Yeah, they actually have no cold resistance, though.
Yeah, they don't have cold resistance, and they don't have poison resistance unless they self-buff.
Right. They can do Elemental Fortitude, which is really nice, and it's something that you probably want to consider doing with them. But, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but without the base cold resistance, then even that 5 that you're adding to yourself doesn't let you keep up with Grip of Winter.
Yeah.
Which is partly why the Gaija are so much more effective against that kind of fatigue play. And also why Vedheim can do it themselves. Although, I guess the Vedi also don't have the cold resistance.
No, Vedi do.
The Vedi Hags?
I think they do.
They do. They have 5 cold resistance.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can get the 10, and then they can do the Rigor Mortis. Or no, Rigor Mortis plus Grip of Winter plays.
Right. Come over and looking at the Zabalba and the Joman situation here. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Arco has rolled out on top of this Jomani's fort with... This is a slightly different formation than we've seen. It looks like he's basically got
a bodyguard blob.
Yeah, it's a bodyguard blob. There's things that this formation is very vulnerable to certain types of things and very strong against others.
It's vulnerable to just like a bunch of longbows put at the front.
Right.
And also just evocation.
Evocations, yeah. So
I don't like that. I think that works fine when you're fighting like literally no mages. I think that the second that you have to actually consider mages and like a large number of samurai archers, that becomes very risky. But there's one more thing to point out, and that's that Joman's army is stuck inside of that fort.
Yeah, they are pinned inside this fort, and they now have the decision. So this was a mistake. I don't think there's nothing. It was a mistake that got called, right? Like, you never want this to happen. Your army's trapped inside of the fort. if you have it come out, you can try to have it come out right now, and maybe everything from the capital can make it here. The problem,
They
though, is
can't.
this army can come down here too and dodge you, and then get between you and the capital. And then you, as Joman, you have to follow them to get back to your capital right here, and that gives Arco the easiest move in the game, which is to PD dump this and take the fight against you when they want, and build a lab here so they can restock on gems and go on the capital afterwards. Or they can just say, fuck it, we'll go on top of your capital, you can fight us there. It's just they lose. Joman has 0 initiative now. They are completely, they're like, they don't really get to pick what happens. They just have to react to whatever Arco's doing.
The one thing that they do have going for them is ninjas. So they probably can at least get a couple assassination attempts going. But the bodyguard blob that Arco is using as his formation also incidentally means all of his guys have bodyguards. So they should be able to handle ninjas pretty well.
And there's Commander Chaff. I don't think ninjas are going to be saving Joe here.
Yeah.
So
probably not, no. I will say, though, that Arco should fix his positioning and set up an archer/evo bait section, just so that he doesn't take any senseless casualties from what is looking to be a very advantageous position.
And he's got, let's see what he was doing here, because he's got a Go Hamato squad being led.
No, that's reinforcements.
Oh, okay.
They're not scripted.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, yeah.
Not...
I wouldn't have known that by looking at it, but that army's not even scripted.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
this is a bad position, and he doesn't have a temple up in his underwater province, so he can't even make any Ryujin.
Oh God, I didn't notice that. Yeah, he's probably too strapped for cash. I mean, this is. I hope Joman knows some jujitsu or something, because he's going to be fighting from his back for the rest of this conflict.
And as you pointed out, he's also very behind on research, so it's not like he can even. It's not like he even has something that he can come back from pretty easily.
I do think Arco is kind of in the same league with him. Let's take a look. Yeah, they're actually comparable, because Arco pulled his mages. Joman just doesn't have any mages.
Yeah. You know the thing about crab generals and shrimp soldiers, right? About how it's how that's a euphemism for like useless troops.
Oh no, I haven't heard that. Go on.
Oh no, that's basically it. That a crab general is like a euphemism from like a general that doesn't know what he's doing, like an armchair general type guy who never goes to the front line. And a shrimp soldier is a similar idea. It's like a garrison guy who might not even have his weapon.
That's really funny. I've never heard that. That's really funny that they're here in Jomanese lands. I mean, sadly, shrimp soldiers, they really do fit the bill for being a garrison soldier, because they're aquatic. They can't really ever go fight unless you come to them.
Yeah,
the crab generals are tough though. These guys are actually good. They're not very good generals, but
it's actually a Chinese saying. But I assume that it might apply to like ancient Japan as well. I just know that it's Chinese.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of like the actual effectiveness of the units, I will say that for underwater versus underwater combat, the shrimps are actually very good.
Yeah.
It's just that you don't often find yourself in situations where that aquatic, like having super efficient aquatic troops matters. But if you look at them like in terms of like their value for their gold cost,
right,
they're a 14 hit point unit for 10 gold. That's pretty good.
With a big metal glaive.
Yeah, well, which actually that part's not great because they're partially slashing and they're link 3. So you don't love that. And they're also metal.
I think when you get this, I think you get the one other metal they rust.
Yeah, there's a lot.
No, it's not made of iron here. It says metal, but it's not.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, never mind then. They must have fixed that because
when you have the slash and pierce type, instead of getting, I think, what's like a 2 or 3 penalty, you get a 1. That's how that works. So,
yeah, you get half the penalty, and it rounds down.
Yeah. So it's not that bad, but
it's not great because they already suffer from attack issues.
Right.
But like in terms of being like frontline guys, for like whatever magic you're using underwater, they're pretty good. Right. I would say that they're comparable with like Atlantean units in terms of underwater combat, even.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. There is a small reference. Crabs have simple minds and simple dreams and do not suffer from the call to deep slumber. So,
well, that's actually just explaining their void sanity.
Yeah, but maybe that's a small reference to the. Yeah. So okay, I mean, this war. I mean, what looked like a very casual kind of, hey, I'm going to poke you thing from Arco is now a true existential threat for Joman. And
Yeah.
he's let himself be pinned up in this fort, and that just spells disaster to me.
My favorite thing is that that's not even like necessarily all of Arco's stuff. That's like the task force sent to go conquer Joman.
Right. Yeah.
You love to see it.
And so far, I mean, he's going for his third capital. He's popped Ulm's cap now. And so far, nobody seems to care that much. So that's
especially
that's
for the player
that
for the player that antagonized everyone, you would think that he would be the guy that would have an easiest time getting a coalition formed against him, but no one cares.
Yeah, no one cares. It's like, oh, he'll get 3 caps, not a problem.
You know who I think should actually be the most involved is Shababa, because I think that he should just go take Joman's stuff for himself.
Yeah. No, I think we're going to start seeing, I think, mark my words, and I haven't looked ahead, but I think within the next 5 turns, we're going to see Alba make a big play. I mean, he's got these Aussies burning a hole in his pocket, and he's going to go murder somebody. I don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah, no, I was just joking, like, oh, really? You think that Fuluk is going to do something by turn 30?
Oh, I haven't played with Fuluk much, so I don't really know. But
he tends to be fairly aggressive.
Okay. But yeah.
So the fact that he's been as conservative as he has been is very unusual.
Yeah, he's going to go on a roll real soon. And I have a pretty good feeling it's going to be Arco. So that's going to be fun.
Could be Arco, could just be eating the free Jomanese food.
Right. I don't think we have much left to cover. I think we've covered everything.
Well, we did cover the major wars. We didn't talk too much about the folks not fighting, I suppose.
Right.
But I think we've covered the relative positions of TNG and Erythia already. I think that, if TNG has Wailing Winds, he can definitely make a good timing push, but I don't think that he's there yet. Actually, he might be, because folks are hitting Enchantment 6, and that's another level 6 spell. So if you compare him to Pangea, I think that would be the best estimate.
Right. I mean, he's 4
That's
turns
Pythium.
away. Oh, there's Pythium? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
if you pull up
Pangea.
Okay, Pangea is pretty far ahead. So,
he's probably 7 turns away from Wailing Wind, so he probably won't have it at the beginning of the war.
7? Oh, I mean, if he keeps buying more mages and researching, I'd say more like 3 or 4, because his curve should slope up a bit as well.
Maybe, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
what 3 or 4 times it's like here? There could be, yeah, he could be there in 3 or 4 maybe.
Yeah, but I just don't think that the timing is right if you don't have that spell, because without it, you're basically fighting like troop buffs into God knows what like elemental and sorcery nonsense Erythia can pull, given their massive research.
I think he's probably thinking, I'm going to go raid some stuff, and we're not going to have my major battle until like 5 or 6 turns when I'm pretty sure I'm going to have Wailing Winds. That's my guess.
Given how, yeah. I don't know. I don't like taking wars when I don't think that I can win the first fight, especially in a situation like this where they have this non-aggression pact.
Right.
So there is going to be like a predictable timing when the folks attack, which means that you should expect to see a major battle, like I would say about 2 turns in.
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks he can hit Wailing Winds in the 3 turns while it's cooling down. That might be the other thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a couple turns after the first turn of combat. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. It depends what his research priorities are and stuff. And maybe we'll get to see really cool thugs. I mean, that's the other thing
I was going to say. Yeah, is that given his bless, he absolutely could use thugs. It's very hard to use thugs against a big astral nation.
Yeah.
Because they can just get bonked with Soulflay.
Right.
So you would need to stack MR, and then suddenly they stop becoming particularly efficient.
Right.
We might see in-army thugs, though. That would be cool.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I mean, I feel like this war is going to be total fireworks once it starts. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's something we don't see enough of, which is like 2 evenly matched players in the mid game that are like, let's go. Nobody else involved. Let's do this. So
yeah, and not only that, but they're 2 of the top players in this game.
Right.
For different reasons, maybe. Because in TNG's case, it's just raw size and gem income. And in Erythia's case, it's being the guy with the most mages and research.
Yep.
One thing also that we didn't mention is Erythia did take Atlantis' cap this turn.
Oh.
That was a little bit of a foregone conclusion. But, Atlantis does have a little bit of stuff in here that gets to get slaughtered.
Yeah. Okay, they summoned some elementals. Definitely, they would have been upset if we did. Everybody would have been upset if we didn't watch this. So thank you for pointing that out. Got fire elemental. Flaming arrows coming out on Erythia's side.
He also has forward deployed mages, so I mean, it didn't wind up costing him too much. But like, if you've got a solo Deduko in a square, if he didn't cast Iron Skin on himself, he's not buffed.
Right.
And that print or that
Oh yeah,
is
these
that a
guys
prince
have
or a
no
king?
protection.
Okay, yeah, they should be well, yeah. Luckily, he killed all the wall stuff very quickly with his evocation, so it doesn't look like he took too much losses. But if we do see any mage losses in the battle report, I would call that unnecessary
Yeah.
casualties. That said, he has the mages to spare.
Thunderstrike's coming out. I mean, the Atlantis has managed to stall them at the gate. If they were able to fatigue the guys out too at the front, that would be even more interesting.
Yeah, the ice elementals did help with that. The
Right.
problem is that Erythia just has massively too much stuff.
Yeah.
Like, if it comes down to a stall fight where, like, the infantry lines are not progressing, Erythia is still going to win just by nuking everything on Atlantis' side.
That's true. That is just
And
so
there
much
are those
artillery.
nukes.
Look at that. The blade winds.
Yeah, I'm not in love with retail evocation in general, but when you have this much firepower, it absolutely looks good.
Yeah. And it's really good at, I mean, Blade Wind is great at clearing out like raised dead hordes, which is high HP, low protection chaff.
Yeah, and those advancing cast mages, those are doing the real killing.
Yeah. Incinerate.
I do think it's funny that towards the end there, his evocation was probably costing
Oh.
about as much friendly fire as it was enemy damage. But
Yeah,
that said,
the back
you
line
love to see
probably.
127 kills on your mage core.
Yeah. That was pretty entertaining. We'll watch this one more time just because it was kind of a fun battle with all the evocation. I'll do it all zoomed out here.
Yeah, you get to see some fireworks. Maybe edit in some music for this part.
Yeah. We'll see. What are your closing thoughts for this episode as we watch this battle?
I'm just excited for what might be an even war coming up, and because we're almost certainly going to see Marignon's big battle. So we'll get to see some interesting scripting there with some good mid-game magic, given that Marignon's already at Enchantment 6 Concentration 5.
Yeah.
So very significant scripting options there. Pythium still has some work to do cleaning up the Agartha situation, but by this point, I think that it's pretty well decided that Pythium is going to be winning that war, barring anyone else getting involved and stabbing Pythium before he can clean up the mess that he made.
Yeah. I'm going to be really interested to see if other people decide to vulture. I mean, I guess there's not many people who could vulture Agartha. TNG could, but they've already poked Erythia now, so that's probably not going to happen. Really, the only person to vulture Agartha is going to be Utgard, and so far they seem to be stagnant, so...
I think that as TNG, particularly if your nap with Erythia is ticking down, just based on how mobile your horse-like squads are,
Right.
I think you can peel off a mage or two to go support like a little stack of horsemen and then go grab some free provinces.
Yeah.
Because it's not like Agartha can actually defend it.
Well, they've only got one here, so you could maybe just talk to Pythium about this one. Be like, hey, we just want this. Which actually is
Well,
worth
I mean-
nothing. It's not 17 gems.
Well, that's partly because Pythium cut him off, right?
Right.
When Pythium moved to the province, like the province just to the east there,
Yeah.
was absolutely something that should have been TNG's.
Right. But I think that's water under the bridge now. I don't think you asked Pythium for that.
Yeah, true. His potential to vulture was blocked just by his being too slow. I'd mentioned this before, but I don't
Yeah.
think that TNG should have given back those provinces to Agartha.
Right.
I think
Yeah,
he should have.
I mean, what you've said has come to pass. It's just been taken by somebody else. Agartha wasn't in a position to defend it. So,
Yeah, I think that if you have a weak neighbor, it's best to just eat them.
yeah.
Get their stuff for yourself.
The only silver lining to that is we'll have to see how relations go between Pythium and TNG. They are partners in Mother Oak, so it's possible that that will form the basis of a long-term or medium-run, cooperation or alliance between them. Where
Yeah. The other thing about these two nations in particular is that I don't think that either of them are like a super scaling threat
Right.
in the way that Vediheim, Shabalba, basically any of the major blood powers or Erythia are.
right,
So if you have one other person that you want to have as like a long-term ally, ideally your long-term ally shouldn't outscale you.
right,
So these two nations, I think that should be actually very comfortable working together just from like a power perspective, because both of them want to be able to be like strong and snowballing early-ish. So in that sense, they're actually very well suited to be partners.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's a great way to think about alliances too. Partner with somebody that scales about as well as you do.
Or more poorly if you want to,
Right, right,
get a leg up.
Okay, well, I think that's it for this episode. We will see you guys back on turn 29. And thank you once again, Sai, for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting.
All right, take care, folks.